Okay, after a nerve-wracking evening, it turned out the part that I dropped landed in a place that I had not expected, which was literally right under here. I thought it had gone under me and behind, but hey, just teaches me to maybe do these kind of builds, maybe not in my office, maybe in the spare room, where I have a little bit more room, can set up a better workspace. But here we go. Okay, so we left off obviously trying to assemble the tool head. So with that, let me get the PDF back up in place. We're on page 163, where we're installing the screws here. Now there's a hole under here, so I need to take this out because I had been trying to fit things appropriately, and it turned out that there's a very tight play, a tight tolerance between where the extruder sits and the motor body and all that. I'm just going to take this out carefully so I don't lose those bits again. There we go. And that's the bit that I had lost there. It's called the shuttle. Now I'm going to have to separate this motor body again, because it seems that it's such a tight tolerance I can't seem to get it perfectly straight to pull it out because of the way these gears work. And it is such a tight bit, and I'm obviously because of that pulling the bearing out at the bottom. So let me just do this. That's it. That's what I needed. There's the shuttle. Get this back like that so that I can carefully lift that. And as you can see, that when it goes at an angle, tends to grab it a little bit more. So I don't want to cause that to be a problem. There we go. Got a hold of it. There we go. Do not want to lose that. There we go. Get that back into there. And I think it's flipped, so let's just do like this. And we'll just reinsert it. No big deal. There we go. And if you'll remember before, I had used a nice large Allen key because it fits perfectly over the top of the bearing, pressing it evenly so it goes in. Let's put that on there, and let's align it so that when I'm putting that extruder gear back in, that it goes through. And see, this does pass through nicely here. It was just because when that's grabbing, it becomes a little bit of an issue. That's the other little washer goes on back of here. I think you can actually use that on here as well, at the same point, because I did find that there's a nice little adjustment that you can do. And I might be tempted to do this to help with its initial alignment. So I'm going to do like that, but I'm tempted not to because it really does need one on the back side. That is our thinner one, I think. Let's just compare these two. Yeah, I think that would actually be better on the back one, because what I found as far as alignment, it needed to come back a little bit, and that one's really thin. So yeah, I am correct. Thicker one that is being provided here. There we go. And just let that be right in center. Right, so as they demonstrated, so I'm going to just quickly just double check that I have cleaned this shuttle up as best as I can, because I did print it with a brim because of how tiny it was. And that's one of those things where I insist on maybe putting it a little bit tighter than probably necessary for the brim tolerances, which is not always ideal when it comes to something like this. It needs to have a certain shape on the end, so I'm just cleaning up the edge just ever so lightly. There we go, that's looking like what it should. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I'm never going to say I'm perfect, because I am far from it. Now that should fit right nice and tight in there, that's fine. Now the thing here, I'm just going to double check its shape. Yeah, a little bit of a brim left on there. And since I did go to bed shortly after the new year, you know, I got some reasonable sleep. I did actually sleep in this morning because I wanted a fresh head for this. There we go, that's better. That looks more like what I had expected. I'm just giving it a little scrape just to get any remnants of the brim that might affect its performance in the actual place. Okay, and then that will be just a little bit, just because my eyes are probably tricking me, but I'm not hurting anything. It's the equivalent of its natural chamfer, and it might be just the color of this material is playing with my eyes, but I don't want to take any chances. There we go. Yeah, and then when that's properly set, it'll hold that right in place, because there will be a bolt there. Okay, right. Now, idler, or guidler as they call it, because it's a guiding idler, will go here. That's fine. Now let's get the motor body in place. That's it, nice and tight. There we go. Right, that's the way it should be. Right, so realign that a bit. There we go. Right, M325. 3 bolts. One here, one here, one there. So let's get those installed. Yeah, I came up here initially to jump right in on this, but I had some other quick tasks I needed to do, so it was a much later start in the day than I would have liked. But I also wanted to spend the morning of the new year, 2025, with my lovely wife, who is so patient with me with this stuff. A lot of people are like, oh, you just do it, man. But your wife is your life, and you chose her because you wanted her in your life. And if you want to keep her there, you need to also give her some attention. There we go. That's it. Not too tight, but not loose. You want it nice and snug where things will stay together. Now this is an interesting one because that has to go through here. I'm pretty sure of it. Yep, I was right. And that goes right into that bit down there. And that's why that particular piece needs to be flush. that's where it needs to be. I wonder if that's not lining up for some reason. No, it's definitely lining up. And the mechanics are moving, so that's good. So it's not me. It's just the tightness of that little what is the trick for the alignment of that? That feels like it's going now. Yep, that's it. Now you don't want to over tighten this one, because if you over tighten it, your latch will not work as intended. Yeah, I need to loosen that a bit. Why does that not feel correct? Something's not right. And I need to see what. Oh, I see. It's the shuttle. It's popped out at an odd angle. There we go. Something feels like it's not aligning correctly, even though this is perfect here. I don't know why that one is. I'm just going to take this one out to find out why. Because this one holds the guide wire, as you know. But when things don't align, I like to know why. Is it something that the tolerance of the printer wasn't right, or did something like a heat insert not sit flush enough? I don't like to force things if I don't have to, or what I perceive as reasonable, force on it, because all that does is lead to a mistake. Right. Let's first see if that closes correctly. Yeah, that does definitely do that. So why is that feeling so tight? Alright, I need to see what this movement's problem about. Oh, that's interesting. That let it do it when I got out that far. So why is that? Interesting. Okay, so why is that? That's our other washer. I need to know why that feels the way it does. If that's the heat insert, not flat or so forth, then that's my fault during insertion. Means I was not firm enough with it. I'm thinking it might be, so let's be safe and just heat up this This is why taking the time and troubleshooting. Let's just see if that feels. Yeah, there's a little tiny bit where it's not quite flat. Okay, so that's my fault. And I know that there's been at least one person that just said, yep, see, that's why you use a heat insert press. I would say you might be right, but at the same point, if you can do this without that, yeah, there we go. Let's see if that's hot enough yet. Yeah, should be just about hot enough. There we go. It's just starting to get hot enough, actually. So that's good, because that means I'm not likely to melt other things in the process, which is an ideal thing. I mean, I know there's other tips, but let's just check that. Yeah, that's much more flush. Yeah, much better. Just double checking the other one while I was there, you know, what the heck. Alright, so this goes back in here. And that's the thing, if you forced that, you'd end up breaking your part. And that's not what you want. Now, this should line up a lot better. And it does. That's better. Let's put our shuttle in and see if that feels better. It still feels funny for some reason. I'm not sure why yet. I wonder if that's because of that. So let's see if that's the case. Now that we know that that lines up, that definitely lines fine. Let's just put this bolt in its spot. And let's just watch the reasonings here. What is preventing it? Oh, okay. It was just being productively awkward. Alright. Maybe it just requires a little bit more force than I was prepared to give it. I wish they would come up with a better solution for that, if I'm bluntly honest. I don't like feeling things that take a lot of force to obviously make them work, especially when they're printed. And even though this is a very strong material, it irks me a little bit. That's it. That there. Regular stealth burner definitely went together a lot easier than this one. There we go. Just about that tight. That actually feels really good now. Okay, I'm a lot happier with that. So, with that in mind, flick that over. I guess it's just like all of them. You know, some things have to kind of get a little bit of mechanical movement to make them start flowing nicely. It's one of the few things that have irked me about 3D printing. There's always little micro lines from the layers that you kind of have to work past or through. Made me think about this concept with annealing, where you can kind of heat the part back up just about close to the glass transition temperature, where things will start to remelt in a way. There we go. That makes me feel much better. Okay, and then a final piece here, which is where it kind of latches onto, which is good. Gives it a locking bar, as per se. And I'm just going to let that go right in like that. And just tight enough. I can feel that's doing that because of the nut, because it's not quite down far as the stopping point yet. That's it. That's the stop point. There it is. Okay, right. Now, straighten that little washer out and get this to go back in carefully. Let's just lift that out slightly. I know what's stopping it is that bit on the end. I just need to get this just right where it lines up with that washer below. Sorry for taking it off camera, but it's just helping my vision a little bit, getting that to go in straight. Come on. It always feels like it's not quite going to reach it for some reason. Like as if it's hitting something. But I'm not sure what. Let's just see if that's making any. Yeah, that's hitting there. There, that feels like it went. Now, let's just make sure that it's reaching its goal. I can see that that little washer is moved. So come on. Get in there. You can do it. Wish that part was self-aligning. I know this probably should have just popped right together. And I know there's going to be at least half a dozen screaming, tolerances, tolerances. Well, if tolerances was it entirely, the rest of this wouldn't have gone together. Alright, let's just see what else there is. Why is this being like as if there's something not lining up still? Because it feels like there's something hitting it, but I don't know what from. Yeah, I was right. It's the washer had slipped and it was blocking it. Makes me wonder if I should just flip this thing upside down to do this. And I think I might just do that actually. Now that the rest of it's done, that washer is the one that prevented it from going in. I think personally they should make a spot on the other side, because I can see this has a place, it has some threads, and that means that you can actually align it that way. Let's just try that again. Oh, that was it. That was it. That went down a lot nicer. Now, let's just, boop, right in. Perfect. Now, I notice it can sink in very far, and they do this because they want you to be able to align up and down. And I found a trick using up here, and I found this extra little screw that one might be able to get away with holding in place to keep it aligned. Now, let me find a piece of filament. Yeah, that'll do. I think that's ABS actually. It's either ABS or some black high-speed PLA that I've kept around for exactly this reason. Yeah, I think this is the high-speed PLA. Now, just keep that to hand because we are going to need that shortly. Now, with that in mind, there it is. Little thin washer here. There we go. Screw under there, yep. Now this is going to be the fun bit. Because you're trying to get this and the rest of the motor body to line up at the same time. There's some very tight tolerances here around this, as an extruder should kind of be. That's it. Got it. Right. There we go. Now, here's the fun part. Let's go ahead and wake my screen up. Now we have a couple of bolts that we need to do here. Those are M3 10s. So 12, 8, M3 8, M3 12. Where's my 10s? Are we having a giraffe? 12. Oh, there they are. Man, I tell you what, I need to go to Specsavers. I should have put this up there. They were out of order. So let's put that over there. So I need 2 of these to go in the bottom. That locks the bottom of the motor body, or the mid body, where it's supposed to be. This is almost like you get to see the typical mistakes that even me, I mean, I'm not going to say I've been doing 3D printing for the last 10 years. No, of course I haven't. You know, I don't have that long in it. But I learn quickly, is the trick. And I'm hoping people will learn from my mistakes. There, that's that. That's why I like sharing this building experience, because again, this is my first Voron, you know, an official Voron kit, yeah, and of course I'm going to make mistakes. You know, I haven't built these specific parts before, so yeah, of course I'm going to make mistakes. I've built ones like it. I've done things on a much bigger scale. But this is a little tiny thing. And when you get little tiny parts, it gets a lot different. Just tightening these down so I can make sure that 1, they're not going to vibrate loose later. And 2, that everything is exactly where it should be. There. Nearly there. There's a certain feeling you get on these when it hits the actual base of the hole, not just there. That one's right. Because the heated insert is not the stopping point. And that is at an angle. There we go. Okay, so that's together now. Next page. That's how to assemble the original gears. And then we want M3 6, M3 6, M3 10. Okay, so we want another single M3 10 and 2 M3 6s. This is our M310 location, and the M36s are there and there. Those should actually screw down to where they're just below the surface when they tighten up, as far as that one's concerned. These two are fine because they're outside of where the motor would sit. So the motor's going to be across there. That's reasonably tight. That's it. Now, that's flowing pretty nicely there. And if I push on the idler, it'll be turning the gears. So, now, page 166. Now they're suggesting that the spacing be about 0.75 millimeter between the gear and the body, yeah? So when you're looking here, that spacing should be about 0.75. So I'm going to actually do something. I normally wouldn't do it like this, but I thought, you know, they're specifying numbers. Let me see if I have any 58. There is on my feeler gauge a 0.75 millimeter. So let's see. So that needs to actually come up a little bit. And this is where I was talking about with that trick that I figured out earlier. I noticed, as I said, there's threads there. So for me, I thought, you know what? If you get a little bolt right in here, it will sit just about flush with that, and you can use it to set this, although you need to get a washer probably in that, to be fair, because it needs to grab above. So let's just grab an M3 shim, just temporarily. It's not a long-term thing. Just enough to set that distance. And you can use it like a safe prying bar. Now you can't do this with one of the normal BMG gears because it doesn't have those threads in the back, yeah? So let's just do like that, and let's just see if we can get that distance exactly. And just that little bit of a turn that I just did gave it to me, yeah? That's very cool. That little tiny bit of a turn that I did just in that moment. And that's it. Now, with that in mind, we can't leave that in there, although I'd love to see somebody make a solution for that where it will help with the alignment both front and back, because I think that would be beneficial. So if you're watching, maybe adjusting this part so that an M3, maybe a flathead screw, and an additional washer maybe behind that would close up behind it, allowing you to put an adjustment to help with your alignment. So let me put this back in here because it's not needed now, but I'm going to save it because I believe it is going to be needed for something else. So that's 0.75 set, and I think they're going to have me test this now. Okay, so they're talking about, as I thought, aligning the drive gear, making sure that it is grabbing when it's supposed to. So let's just feed this first off. Let's get a little bit of tension. Actually, no. Let's pop that out so I can see, if I can. Yeah, I can just about see that. Now, try to get a picture of this if I can. The idler will self-align in that regard, yeah, because it can slide a little bit left and right. But I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that. I am going to try, because I'm sure that'll be beneficial for people. In fact, let me get a different colored filament to play with here. Let's just try some of this. There we go. I'll use some white filament where you might have a chance of seeing it. And a little bit of a light. And let's see if we can get that where you can see it. Because this is what they're going to be talking about. Now, looking into the camera, let's just see. There. You see that? That's what you want. It goes right in the middle of where the teeth are. So, see that? There's your teeth. And you want that to come right into that area where it can pass through, ultimately out the bottom. And into your hot end, ultimately. And when I do like this, as you can see, it's just enough, because of the wobbliness of this filament, to be perfectly aligned. And that's what we want. And I'm going to leave that piece of filament in there just to help the idler. Next page. Right. Tension. So this, just push a little bit to grab the shuttle. Oh, come on. Press. That's going to take a little bit of pressure. There we go. Only a couple turns, I think. That definitely feels a lot tighter than I would personally like. But this also comes to where that little screw was about. Remember they were talking about that? And what that's going to relate to is how strongly it grips that, which will also make a difference as to how much the gears mesh. Because if they're popping like that, it's way too tight. Yeah? So let's try something. Let's see if we can activate this. That is really tight. Yeah, definitely going to be some breaking in time. There we go. Just carefully eject that. See, that's going to be very strong right there. It's already getting some tension just because of the aspect of what that is. And what you don't want is too much tension there. How can I think that next screen tells us how to adjust that. Too much tension will result in print issues. Correct. So let me just do like this. So the way they're saying to adjust this is to release that and then get this to come out just a little bit. That's going to be a fun one to try and adjust that. They should put a hole here for that purpose. Because once that is in there, that is quite a feat to get it to turn without really messing with. And because you don't know what the tension's going to be, just trying to turn it slowly without messing up that. I wonder if that's just because of all the usage I've put on it. Let's just see if another one grabs it any better. No, that one doesn't have a tip on it anymore. Let's just see. Where's my other ones? No, that one's one. Those little tiny Allen keys, because I'm not buying the real high-end ones, I think they wear out a lot quicker. Let me just see if I get another one that I can use. Because that's a really tiny, like 2mm type one. And ideally, I'd like one with a little ball type end. Got a few of these, as you can see, from various printing kits that I've acquired over the course of time. Let's see if I can see that again. And because that bolt is now inaccessible from any other means, it's going to play some fun. It'd be nice if they had an initial measurement that they might suggest. Well, instead of making this draw out video time, I'm going to pause it and I'll be right back. Okay, after much tweaking and tugging and getting things aligned, making sure that that's just enough tension, I'm of the impression that, and I don't know if you can hear this, there's like you can definitely tell the gears are meshing, yeah? And if I push on here, it's definitely holding, you know, and gripping appropriately. And if I loosen it any more than this, then it starts to slip. But maybe this is just something that helical gears sound like. Because I think this is actually one of the first ones I've used that has this kind of feeling. I don't think it's any of the printing tolerances, but this could be just yet another learning experience for me. But that is now tight. I did actually go through my things. I found some of these, which will ultimately replace those, you know, with the regard of spacing between the tool board and the motor. So that is going to be one of my future upgrades. It's just not going to be a now thing. Because as I promised, I'm going to try and build this exactly as the original kit gives. So moving forward again, because I had it paused probably for the better part of 10-15 minutes while I did that, taking time to make sure everything was as it's supposed to be. Now, because there's like longer, shorter, stiffer springs will change the tension characteristics and have an impact on how well the tension mechanism works. Consider buying the original Bondtech part, as those are known to work well. If you source from a different vendor, check that it is roughly 12mm long with an outer diameter of 6mm and a wire thickness of 1mm. And then they kind of show you know, which direction tightens it, which direction loosens it, you know, and so forth. They also go into latch mechanism, a seat into the groove of the shuttle piece. This is what allows the extruder to grip the filament effectively, and it kind of shows a pictorial as to how it should be. Then, of course, adjusting that little M2 6mm flathead screw, so that, you know, and then they called it the anti-squish thingy-majig. So softer and flexible materials will deform and extrude poorly under too much tension. Mini stealth birder adds an anti-squish thingamajig screw that sets the minimum distance between the drive gear and the idler. Backing this screw out increases the distance, and the tightening the screw decreases the distance. Setting this minimum distance helps prevent gears from meshing too tightly or binding up in the extruder, which is why I was adjusting that, because it felt like it was over meshing. Then close the latch, put a piece of filament through the extruder, then spin the 50T or 50-tooth gear with your finger to test the feeding capability. You are looking for light teeth marks on the surface of the filament. We will repeat this step once more after the motor is installed. Yeah? So, moving forward, it's time for me to grab some more parts out of the box, because I'm trying to not have too much here on the surface and pull the things out as necessary. But yeah, this is reasonable, because it's not going to move super fast beyond a certain speed need. Yeah, even at its fastest speed, that's not going to really go crazy. So I believe these are, yeah, is it these? Yeah, these are the blower fans. Okay, so they want us to take out the blower fans and to start installing them. So I'm rather excited that we're at this bit, because it's starting to feel more like we're getting to the end of the mechanics finally. So that makes me very, very pleased, as you can imagine. Let me just put that over there. Right, so these actually that come with it actually says they're dual ball bearing, so I'm rather impressed with that. Let me just get this back behind the retainer again. This is one of my bugbears with fans, that I like to have these up as far as I can out of the way of its frame, and in order to do that, these really need to be through that bit. Let's just and these feel like some good quality wires. They're nice and thick feeling, they're stiff, like the conductors are actually quite either solid or something similar, which is very, very nice. Just going to carefully push on that one. It looks like they put a third, like a, you know, speed sensor on this one, which is quite interesting, because the body of it suggests that they also make a normal. Yeah, see, that's not going to go any further than it is. Okay, so this was probably one that has a 2-wire and a 3-wire. And fan 0, so make sure we're looking, yeah, fan 0. So fan 0 is your part coolers. Now let's see here, that will go here, like that, I believe. No, hold on, this is wrong. No, I did have it right. So that is a very there we go. Let me just make sure that orientation. Yeah, okay. I would have thought these would have been a little thinner. it in such a way that the fans will blow down into the part cooling ducts. Okay, here we go. Let's just try not to overthink this. I just wonder though, at times, because they have almost a groove on top. It might just be how they did it, I don't know. Nope, it doesn't even have any screw or bolt holes to hold them in. They just kind of fit in there. Alright. Just making sure I'm not doing it wrong, that's all. Definitely one of those challenging ones. That is definitely a tight fit though. Just trying to get that fit. I wonder if this is one of those where it kind of ends up snapping in place. They don't really show that well. It's just ow. Alright, that filament needs to move back because that's got a sharp bit on it. There it goes. It is literally, I don't think that's going to come out easily. I think the tension that it puts on it will be more than enough in that regard. Let's see here. Am I right with this? No, that's going to have to go down a bit deeper. Hold on. Just going to make sure I'm looking at the right two fans. For me, fan 0 may or may not be the appropriate part number. And considering how many times I've seen between the part in the Voron guide and the part in the kit being different, I can't help but question. So, playing it safe here. There we go. Let me just check what those other fans that are in here. I think I saw more than one set. What is that? Fan 1, fan 2. And those that, no, see, that'll be the front ones. Okay. Just making sure. That's going to be next anyway, so I might as well pull that out. Alright, put those there. So, what is it that I'm doing different? Ideally, this one's going to go that way, most likely. So this one's going to be like that, and this one is going to be like that. Yeah. I wonder if they have any guidance on that. I see what that's for now. The groove is actually for wire management. Okay, that's quite clever. Yeah, they tell you to put the fan in, but they don't initially tell you that you need to do the wire management above each of those for that second one. Okay, So let's get this one. I think we need fan 1. I think it might be also time to grab the video from FYSETC and let that start back up again so that I can see which ones of these are what. And I'm happy to say that all of these are ball bearing fans, which is quite amazing. I'm thinking fan 1, fan 2. I think this one's going to be the motherboard fan. Fan 2 for cooling the motherboard in this. So I'm going to put that off to the side. But I believe as they're displaying, it's just here we go. Here's where they're bringing up some fans. Okay. Yep. Okay, after being called for my dinner, now I'm back to finishing more of this build. Now let's get these as best as I can in that regard. It's interesting that they went with a 3-wire fan on this, but so this bit goes down. We ideally want it right up to the front edge. So I don't want to try and force it that way. And it is a very tight fit. But the wires have to come out the back. That's guaranteed. There we go. I am, however, wondering if these fans are just a little bit too big, or if I'm having a tolerance issue here. No, it's right there, alright. It will fit. But it is a tight one, that's for sure. That's it. Boom. So it will fit. It's just a very tight fit. That's it. Got it. And nice and freely spinning. That's a good thing. I always felt that these should fit under here. So I'm not sure why that particular thing sits like that. Right, there we go. I'm wondering if they're going to be picky because of the LEDs here, if I'm going to have to pop that back out. I have a feeling there's an extra step that I need to think about here. Because the opposite fan needs to come out here. So, I was right with that regard. This one has sufficient space, and this wire needs to come through there. I have this really weird feeling that I need to take that into account. So I'm going to pop this out and I'm going to find the LEDs and see if I'm right, because if I am about the wire management, then these little bad boys, it needs to come through here I think it's time to check that. Where are the LEDs? That's that. As they said in one of the kit things that there were LEDs included for those cutouts, which would make sense. That's the display. That's the main board. There we go. There's our LEDs. So, let's look closely at that. You don't put a channel on both sides just for the sake of doing it. So let's have a look. Since it's not in their video, and it's not one that normally is in the Voron build guide. These are RGB style LEDs, which will go in here like that. If I can get the alignment just right with this tolerance. Just nice and careful. There it is. Everything is so firm. On the edge of the circuit board so it's not to cause any damage. Nice and even pressure. That's it. Now I think that has to go just a wee bit further. But not by much. There it is. I think that's about as far as it can go, because there's nothing that normally goes on the back of here. I'm just thinking, yeah, that's about right, because otherwise it goes too far and it won't. Yeah, because that stops right there on both sides. Just so you can see, these are addressable LEDs. It means you can change their color based on the scripts. So it can tell you print status even. Also, if you're not careful when putting these in, you'll rip that LED off of the circuit board. So you need to press with an equal flat pressure and just a little wiggle just to get it to go in. That's it. That's it. Nice and tight. There is just a tiny bit of difference there, so that's it. It's all the way in now. I just need to be sure that these are going in the way it's intended. That way. Yeah, that'll go like that. So with that, also this way, I am really liking this version as far as the way it was designed. Very lightweight. There, and I don't think I need to worry about that because everything's going to come up back here. Right, so yeah, one of those things that I think manuals should include wire management, best suggested, and then if you've modified anything, then you go by that. So this will go there. That means I can go ahead and put this one back in and not be worrying as to whether or not it's in the right spot or if it's going to block something. I'm guessing they make it so that you can come on either side as far as the fan is concerned. And according to the video, it looks like they're going on the same side anyway. So on their version 1, they only had this cut out. This looks like it has capabilities for both sides. So it's interesting to know those differences between the version 1 and the version 0.2 R1. That's it. Nice and tidy in. Now, this fan, all the way down? Yes, it is. Okay. So this goes right on down in That's it, nice and tight. Yeah, no blockages, good. And now for the last one, and this needs to be kept up high when that's being done. Do apologize with all this coughing, it's rather annoying even to me. So we want this on the outside. Hold on a second. In order to do that, this has to be like that. Definitely some very stiff wires. That should be just enough room for those to push up in there as this slips in. Just a little bit of flex to release some of the tension. That's it. That's looking healthy. And they have a little bit of a groove down there to accommodate where this will be down toward that bottom. I am so sorry. Just keep having these coughs, but I don't want to give up getting this build done. There's times I've thought about maybe I should do ones and try to find some music that I can use without having to worry about royalties or any of that, because I'm not doing this for profit. There we go. That's that. Right, we are getting somewhere. And let's just going to pause this while I look at the next step. Okay, moving forward, we now have our little pancake stepper, and we need some of the M3 10mm screws. So we need 2 of those. It's not saying that I need any washers, so that's kind of good, I suppose. I'm surprised, actually, but is what it is. Now, as a point, the helical gears, I put a little tiny bit of super lube and worked it in by doing like that with it, because I've always felt that metal on metal really should have some kind of lubrication, even if it's only a tiny amount. Since this portion here, your 50-tooth gear, is palm or Delrin, you don't lubricate that, or the metal gear on here. So, as a point. And this is where we set this in place and put in our 2 screws. Now, I think I know why they use such long screws, and that's because of those standoffs. So let's get that through there first. Let's see if my sausage fingers can get that through there. Haha, there we go. Now, I probably could have just unlocked the latch, making that easier. But stubborn old me. just nice and loose. And same thing on the other side. This one, much easier to reach. Now I can see what they've done here. This side doesn't really move much. And it's more of a single thing where the other side slides. This lets you adjust your motor tension against the gear because you want it just tight enough to mesh with the gear on your 50 tooth, but not enough that it prematurely wears the gear out. Because if it goes in too tight, if you get that motor tension too tight, it will prematurely wear out that gear. Anybody who's had a BMG extruder and set the tension too tight, they'll recognize that, where the gear started to have teeth that were deformed. There we go. Okay. There we go. Still kind of loose, but not too tight. And there we go. Still enough that we can adjust the motor tension. Now I'm going to see what they say. Okay, these screws need that thing for the spacers. Yep. So let's see. Yes, these are you sure? Yes, these screws need to have extra thread on the back side to attach spacers for strain relief. If you are using a toolhead PCB, you still need the extra thread and spacers, which we are. So what's the next thing? So they're saying to unlatch it, open up the latch and go there, rotate. On the next page we'll be setting the proper gear mesh between the motor 10-tooth pinion and the BMG 50-tooth gear. You will benefit from good lighting and some magnification, but it is not required. Adjusting the motor backlash. With the latch open, hold the head at an angle so you can see and move the 50-tooth gear with your finger. Manipulate it back and forth so that you, as you do so, rotate the motor down to the gear. As the two gears mesh, you will feel and see the play, that it becomes less and less. Once you have a very small amount of movement, your gear mesh is set. Once you feel good about the gear meshing, snug up the bolts and we're done. In the next step, make sure you will still have some backlash after you have those screws tightened. Zero backlash will cause premature wear of the gear. In other words, if there isn't just a little bit of play here, yeah, like, you know, just a little bit, then it's a problem. So with that, let's see if I can pop this off. That is definitely going to take some pop it off and back on a few times to get it to start snapping a little nicer. There we go. Might have to make a tool for that. There we go. That's it. Now, I see what they mean about wanting a bit of lighting, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to see, even with that all the way out. I don't think I can see all the way up in there. I think the tolerance is too tight, even though, that's interesting. That's interesting, because I would have thought that should have come out. Oh, there we go. That's better. I just hadn't pulled it out far enough. Okay, let's see. you can only barely see where the gear is, so probably better off doing it here. I think I want to tighten this one first, just a little bit more. This way I'm nudging it down. This way it'll feel better to me. That's 0. That is about right. Just a little bit of backlash. Not much, but just a little bit. Tighten that down nice and tight to where it's not going to be coming loose, causing it to wear the gear. There we go. Okay. And then that's better. There's a little bit of interesting feel to that. And I think it's the wear on the end of this that needs to happen to make that easy to pop loose. But that's about where, and that actually feels better. I don't feel the popping and so forth. So it's interesting that you need the tension of a motor to make that feel more smooth, but that sorts our gear. And light teeth mark on the filament, so that's doing its job. Better safe than sorry. After tightening down these two, recheck that you still have proper gear meshing. Blah 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 blah. Alright, tool head. Right, so we know what that's going to be. This is for our tool head. And it's time to break out that. I've been looking forward to this part. Now, I believe this stuff has maybe already been applied, but I'm going to check anyway, because if it hasn't, it needs to be done. So here we have, if you're going to use a V6 mount, you can. So it's a full hot end. So if you ever decide to move away from your V0 and go to something bigger, you already have a tool head. This is the sailfish, which is a pretty nice and amazing hot end. Definitely good for high flow. That is this sock. So just so you can see what it looks like under here. It looks like it comes with a 0.4 hardened steel nozzle. There we go. Because I need access to these two little bolts anyway, in order to check if there is heatsink compound up in there. But this exposes the thermistor and your ceramic heating cartridge, which is nice. There's your little nozzle inside of your ceramic heater. It actually looks like they may have put some compound in that, which is very interesting. I've always been told that if you're going to do that, you need to use what is it? It's boron silicate or something like that. So quite interesting. And I need this one in order to do this. So that's that. Yes, I don't know if they've done this. This is why I need to check it. Because if they haven't, it does need to be done. This will maximize the thermal conductivity between the throat and the heatsink. There we go. Aha, there's two little Allen screws, or grub screws, on the side here. So let's go ahead and loosen those up. That's that one. Let's just do that with the other end because we don't need to use that for that. That's that one. Just loosen it ever so slightly. There. Alright, so just remember that that is equal to there. Okay. And, as I suspected, there is not a lick of heatsink paste in there. So I would really like to have that in there. This is why it's good never assume that it's been done at the factory, except for maybe here. There we go. So you need to put a little bit around that. Just squish that down and away, and we're going to tear it up here, ideally. They would have you tear it down here, but I'd like some control of that being released, and I can see that the pouch that comes up to there. So let's cut it right about there. Right. Get a little bit to come up just on the surface. I don't want to empty the bag. Is the trick of this. You don't need to use every last bit of this. Is the biggest point. There we go. There's a little bit. So as you can see, there's not a lot. So you don't want to just glob it on. There. That should be more than enough for the entire job. And let's just press the rest of it down and spread this as best we can, nice and thinly, onto here, and just turn it around. Just putting a nice thin coating on the entire surface of the throat. That should just about do it. There we go. And that's the throat done. Let's get a little paper towel. Clean our hands back off. There we go. So, put this back up here. Right. with that and clean off the tool. There we go. Now, time to put this back together. So we know that the grub screws are there. And because of that, we would like this to be right like that. And if you end up with any extra, you know, get a paper towel, clean it off the edges, loosen the grub screws if you need to, and just work it down so that it gets all up in there, like so. Like I said, you don't want a lot, and ideally, you don't want any of that touching down there at that little heat break. If you can help it. So let's just get one of these, get that on the end of here. Oops. That, there we go. That's the majority of that excess. Just clean that off. This way you don't have big globs of it on your heat break where it can transmit heat where you do not wish it. There we go. And that is exactly where you want that. As with most of these type of heat sinks and hot ends, the only place that you really want the throat to come up to, you want its bimetallic portion perfectly even with the top of the heat sink. And you can use these screws to kind of help with that. As a point, at certain temperatures, it may actually be not a bad idea to take these out in some cases, because they do conduct heat, and if your fan cooling of the hot end is not sufficient enough to kill that heat coming down those screws, it will actually be a problem. Now, that's about what it should look like. I'm going to see if I can get that right up in there. As you can see, that's just about flush. There we go. I think that's flush there. Just going to check it again here with my... There, yep. And if you have to, you can adjust these to get just the right height between that and get it level before you lock down these grub screws, which will then lock it in place. Yeah, so now that I've got that right where I want it, I'm going to lock these down, which will lock that into place. There we go. Not a lot of tightening, don't over tighten it. You just want the grub screws to bite into the copper. There we go. And you don't want to strip them either. That's it. And that one. And then we'll do this one. This will get a little bit of pressure because you don't want those coming loose either. But this will help keep an equal tension. And there we go. One more close by look. You can see there's a little bit of the heatsink paste just at the edge ridge, but that's where you want it, right like that. Yeah. Right, so we put the sock back on it, observing where the wires are, being at the back. There we go. That way everything goes back together as it should. And that's that. That's the way that should be. Exactly like that. Yeah? Right, now we can go ahead and mount that into here. Now I'm just going to look to see if they tell us which way. Right, so that tells us which way that goes. I do suspect that the wires will head toward the back. Right, okay. So, with that in mind, we get our thing like this, and surprisingly enough, I had worked this out the other day, that this actually goes in here with the words facing you toward the rear of the unit. So with this, we put this here like so, and we should be able to have those line up. With that in mind, let's just squeeze that a little bit. Let's just squish that remaining paste back down to the bottom so that we don't get any leakage while it's in storage. Put that in there. Now, break this out. We're not going to need any of this other than the screws, because we don't use a collet on this because we're not using Bowden. This is actually classed as reverse Bowden, I believe. We're not going to use the clip for the collet, or these two little silver screws which would actually hold the V6 mount onto the heatsink. We just want these 4 screws right here, which, if I'm right, these are 2.5 millimeter, which is the same as a Voron, like the Voron Revo or the Voron Dragon, or any of the other typical ones that are made specifically for Voron printers. There we go. That's that. We'll save those exactly like that. Put those in the bag and away. And now let's go ahead and get this mounted. So using your smallest Allen key, we're going to get this down in here. And just get it started before I snug them all up. That's it. That's the one. That's exactly the way it needs to be. Good. There's that. And finally, there is that. Okay. Right. That seems to be nicely centered. Now, just go ahead and work on tightening these down. Again, I like to do them crisscross style, kind of like you do on wheel nuts. Here's that. There's this. And finally, there's that. Now, this particular piece I do not need. It's a spare. So I can put that away. Yeah. There's just one more run. I think I'm going to use my shorter ones where I can feel things a little bit nicer. So I'm not overdoing it, but I'm also not underdoing it. That one's too small. That should be the right size. There we go. Yeah, there's a little bit more that I can do on that. That's that one. And it never hurts to check these kind of things once in a while, even on your big printers. If your hot end, because of all the vibrations that are being generated by the rest of its mechanics, your hot end can work loose. Unless you were one of those clever people and put some, thread lock on the threads going into the heat sink. So Loctite is a particularly big favorite of some. There we go. One more little tightening. That one. And there we go. That's that. Right. So, now, piece of PTFE we would like this to have. Now, this kit comes with just like the one big piece. So there's going to be a bonus tool here in a moment that you're going to finally see what it was for. I just need to get that piece of PTFE out. There it is. So, as we saw in the beginning of this journey, there is some PTFE. Now, I can see they've been ever so kind as to provide two different kinds, which is kind of cool, really. This is extra bits, so it obviously comes with a memory card, 16 gig. Now, I really like that clear stuff, and it also appears to be a slightly larger emitter diameter, which is going to be good, but that's actually something that I have come to learn is actually really important if you have certain scenarios where filament length or distance from the rest of the system is above a certain amount. Let's see what they've done here. So we've got some typical 2mm inner diameter. That looks like 2.5. Let's see how much of each. And they've given us equal lengths of each, except for the clear one. The clear one seems to have just a hint extra, which I am ever so grateful for, because I would prefer to use that for this portion. So this blue stuff, obviously, which is going to be your typical, probably 2mm, or it'll be 1.9, similar to Capricorn. tube that most people are familiar with. Now, here's the trick. This has to have a specific length of PTFE going between here and the extruder. This is finally what a portion of this tool is for. That 6 millimeter means that if you put this through here, yeah, and you run this all the way down as far as it can go, yeah, if you cut it off flush with the top of that, you have exactly the right amount, yeah. And I'm surprised that more tools like this don't exist, if I'm bluntly honest. So I'll just grab a little razor tool here I have so that I can do that. Now we go, press down on that hard, make sure this is flush, and then just nice and easy across the top. There we go, nice and flush. This way we get the perfect amount. Now I'm going to do something extra that I've been doing for ages. This helps with making sure that when the filament starts coming down toward the hot end from the extruder, that it actually goes, even if it hits the edge, it'll recenter toward that. Yeah, it'll recenter it automatically by doing this. And now, because I know this one is not as sharp as it used to be, that's why I use it for stuff like this, I'm going to grab the one that is sharp so that this becomes easier. And you just want about a 50 to 60 degree angle around the edge. You don't take a lot of material off. Just put a nice little chamfer around the edge of the tube. And you always do this in an area where you know that potentially filament will be coming inbound. Yeah, like I said, it's just for making sure that when that happens and filament is on its way toward the hot end, just on the tip of a filament, that it's going to recenter it if it hits an odd bit. And I can see just a little nibble from where I was trimming it. That's better. There we go. Nice little bevel chamfer. Might give it just one more swipe just to, as you can see, not a lot of material comes off. Just a few little bits, like a little string almost. Like I said, you're not looking to totally dig this out. There we go. You're just looking to get, and this makes it really easy if you look close. You can see that it's just a little, let me see if I can put something behind that that'll contrast with it. You can see it's just a little angle right at the edge. Just enough to let it recenter as it's going in. Okay, so next page. Yep, so 6 millimeters. I'll just double check that tool. Exactly 6 millimeters. Perfect. And this will also be the same as the Revo. So if you change this out with the Revo piece instead of the sailfish or dragon, you're fine. So now they have us inserting this up into here. That is definitely going to be an interestingly tight fit because of those third wires. Like I said, I'm not sure why they used ones like this, but I'm sure they had their reasons. That is a definite little squeeze with those in there. Let's see if I can just get this up here. I don't want to damage anything, but it's definitely very tight tolerances. Literally a few microns. And that fan wire is definitely not wanting to flatten out as much as I'd like it to, which changes its thickness as per se. Let's see if I can do this. It fits there. It's not until it gets to that wire that it becomes an issue. So let's see if I can manipulate this in a way that will assist it not cutting the wire. Okay, let's try that another direction. Let's try it up here. That's it. Now that's semi-flexible in that section, so that may help us. I don't want that too far up just yet because I need to get it down in there so I can press the tube up in. That worked. Now down just a hint. Talk about a tiny extruder. That's it. That is so snug in there. And that lined up perfect. Boom! That is beautiful. That is some beautiful kit there. Oh, that is rather relieving. Right. M335. Two of them to hold our tool head. I think it's going to be finally time to cut these off flush, or leave them with a couple of millimeters at best behind there. So they said this one goes here. Let's put that there. There's my bigger one. There we go. It also tells me that those holes, when it was printing, were close enough that it made it work, but it grips the threads lightly of this, which is good because it'll also help keep it sturdy inside of there. That's good. There we go. That's one. That one here. There we go. That one slipped through okay, so that hole formed correctly, I see. Right. Let's have a look. And yep, where it's time to put that on there. So since that looks like it's flush, it's time to cut these bad boys. I think I will do that with a razor knife. Voron, which has more blade on it. There's my other one. I don't want to spend ages looking for that other knife, so if I can't immediately lay hands on it, then I'll just move on to using the other little tool that you saw. Yep, not right here on the top. So I'll just use this one. Maybe that's one for you, if I say putting a blade in there for doing these. I know it's an expense, but and we'll just right like that. Nice and easy. There we go, that's that one. Just a little millimeter or so, not even maybe a half a millimeter, but it's rubber. It will flex down, which will overall help also steady this against. We've got our two M3 nuts in here for that to budge against. So let's roll this down. That's a lot of room there too, so I don't see that being an issue with radiated heat. So that's interestingly enough in itself. But I'm pretty sure that everything will be coming up like this to a degree. So let's just get all of that out of the way so that we can put that right up against those two holes on there. Oh, missed. That's one. And then there's also one that comes in from the back, I see. So that's it. There we go. That's the way it goes, right like that. Okay, now with that in mind, did I place that here? That's one. There we go. That's going together really nicely. That is some really tight spaces behind there. Don't want to over tighten it, but I also don't want to under tighten it. That's nice. Alright, and what size is the one from the rear? M316. So let's get 14, 16. Here we go. One M316. And this extra brass that I have here, I'm going to put in a special place at some point here in a second, because it never hurts to have one extra. There, and 3 brass. So I have a feeling there will be more things to be added. Some of that didn't get used because there's sufficient parts in here for the printed, as I said, and since it uses the lightweight rail and it uses a CNC gantry, big difference. Now, this should have, in theory, lined up. So I may have been a little too quick to do this. Let's loosen that back up because it needs to line up with that top one, which is the one they said that I needed to glue. And this is why they said they didn't want it to come loose when you're doing this bit. There it is. Let's just get it to line up with that, if I can. Oops. Where's that? I'm hitting too low. That's what it is. Just need to give it a squeeze. That's it. I can feel that biting now. There we go. Now, please tell me no wires are pinched. That's it. No wires pinched today. I probably should have put this with the motor on the other way around. I could probably still do that at some point, but I went by what they showed, and since the tool board's going to be here, I think it'll be correct. There we go. Now, let's get that back in there. Get that tightened in again. While I'm tightening that, so get strain relief. They're showing for a strain relief. Umbilical cable management. They're not showing if you're going to use a tool board. Alright. That's going to be one of its own interesting things, but I think that's going to be the time for another bang. Wire length from the tool head to the motor plate is about 200 meters, or 200 millimeters. Extra length is wasted length. Wire should have minimum slack when tool head is at the front of the printer. So, boom. And it says organization is key. Pass range for heater and thermistor and fan wires. Okay. That's it. Nice and tight. Right. This is where it'll be very, very interesting with regard to where things are and where they will route to, especially the thermistor, heater, you know. For the moment, I will put these on. because I'm gonna look into the PDF over the next day or so and look at the tool head and how all of that goes on, because we're getting to the point where it'll be time to do that soon. This is not, I see why some people don't like these, because it's so thin and it can easily be warped by the heat of the heat inset. I'm just going to grab that with the pliers and just give it just a little extra tightening. There we go. That's it. Ultimately, it will get this on the back, most likely, just to give it some extra thing, you know, coverage. This is the thing they were talking about, the strain relief, which will go here, but I need to see if that's going to apply if we have a tool head, which does not use some of the stuff that's on here. So with that, I think we're going to call it done for the moment. This is now starting to look like a little beast of a printer that it will be. And the rest is for another time. And thank you again for watching. Okay, just a little update to this. I actually went looking to see what parts I was going to need next, and looking at the details, I found that they did actually provide the copper pillars. This is kind of where I thought, oh, okay, you know, they did provide a lot of things in that regard that were optional, as well as things that were unique to this kit. So these are the copper pillars on the back of your mini stealth burner, so that replaces these, which is good, because that was something I read a lot of people had suggested were not really stable. So I'm going to put those on there, and now in the next step they had the board for the tool head mounted on here, which in the video that they were doing, because it was a 0.1, it was before this kit existed, and obviously would not have come with some of the things that this one does. But this being said, there we go, just tighten that nicely. If I did a little digging, I could probably find my wrench, but that worked. Okay, now this is our tool head board. Now these are going to be M3, and they're going to be very short, so I suspect that those are M3. Did I say? I'm just going to double check that PDF to see what they think. And PDF moves right on past into electronics and wiring. They don't even cover putting the tool head on yet, which is probably because of the way that this works. But I'm going to have one more quick look at the original FYSETC video and see what screws they used, because it'll be the same size. Fast forwarding. Right, what screws? I'm showing the alignment. 8mm. So that's these bad boys. Now, this is actually to cover your tool head once everything's connected. So I need 4 of these. There we go. And I can put this away now because that is completed. All of them. This is our little tool head board. So what I'm going to do now, and because I know I'm starting to run out of room for video recording, I'm probably going to go ahead and get this part up to this stage recorded in a format that can go ahead and be published, and that will clear up some space, as per se. But I wanted to get this at least in there. Now, we put one here. Let's just bring this back into view. Grab this Allen key. There we go. And then these will secure it in place. There we go. Now, I'm not going to try and go crazy on this because there is a lot to do with that regard that is specific to it. This is our M36 toolhead board, powered by a little RP2040. Well, these come pre-loaded, so we don't have to worry too badly about that. Let's just have a look at these. Okay, so that's our actual heater, RGB LED. That's our stepper motor, so we kind of know that this one is going to go like that. I think this can actually let's just have a look at this. See, I had a feeling that that needs to be upside down, and I think I'm going to do that, but I'll show you the mountings of this, and then I'll go back into the rest of this later. Yeah, this needs to be flipped around. Heat sink to the outside, and then that will be like this. Yeah, and then everything will cook in. So on the next segment, I will go through what goes to which ports, but that's after I flip this motor, you know, to have this at the bottom because otherwise it's not going to be long enough to do that way. But it comes really close to that bolt, which is one of the reasons I originally flipped it. But I think this is going to be the better opportunity, having that down where this can be here. Okay, and with that, I'll put this away and get to flipping that motor, and then I'll do a little short segment as to where all the wires go. Okay, now that we've got that motor reversed, I can go ahead and put in at least this one, which is our stepper motor, the right hand LED, which will be RGB 2. Just make sure of the orientation of that. Just want to make sure that's in. That's it. Now it's in. Our heating element, which will probably be after this is a bit closer, because I think that the thermistor, yeah, thermistor is going to be on the side there. This is our fan 0, which is going to be on the front. Okay, so that means our other RGB LED, which will be here. I think this is just for expansions, because that's got quite a large number of pins. So I suspect that's for I/O expansions. 10 to 12. So it's extra pins from the look of it. It's probably in the schematics, but I'm not going to mess with that just at the moment. So with this being like so, that should be, in theory, everything I need to worry about. So I'm going to put that to the side there, let it fall out that side of it. There we go. That will be like that. And until I'm ready to put the shroud on there, this will hold this in place. That's a 4-pin fan there, which they're only using 3 pins of it, so it's not a full PWM stroke tack, so it's just a 24 volt that you can use with speed sense. Kind of clever. There we go. Right, so this, get a little bit extra edge on that. Our thermistor, I'm just going to get me a torch so I can read that. I believe that is our thermistor. T0. Yep, thermistor 0. Yep. Okay, so this will probably would have been better to leave that a little bit more slack, if it was at all possible, if I'm honest. But when that's nice up and tight, I suspect that takes up a lot of the slack that was necessary. Now this one will be this way. That's our heater wire going to the ceramic heater on the hot end. That goes in that back corner one. Now let's just work on this wire management here a little bit. Get that LED wire up like that. There we go. This is a fan. So heat there, fan. What is that one? Again, need a, because I'm not looking at the schematic and I'm not looking at their wiring guide just at the moment, but I will check it in a minute. Plus signal, that's for a probe. Okay. If you use a bed level probe. Okay, so fan 0. Fan 0, in my opinion, has always really been the hot end fan, because it's your primary heat. There we go. Then this is, oh, maybe I got this wrong. Hold on. Hold on. I wonder if that was the trick of why they had stuff on both sides. Fan 1. Oh, no, fan 0, fan 1, fan 2. Okay, right. Fair enough. So why did they call that fan 0? Did they use fan 0 as a part cooler? Okay. So they labeled it as such. Highly interesting. That's that. And then this. Just get some more light again. Yep, fan 1. That's labeled fan 1, so there we go. Put my torch back over here. Right. So this will come around like that. And there we go. So let's tidy up this a little bit. Let's get that wire to go that way. There we go. These are reasonably tidy anyway. So with that, let's see if I can get these to play nice now, because that has to go to the back of that cover. Not much of a strain relief on here, if I'm honest, so I may have to look into alternatives. That's definitely not playing nice at the moment. Let's see if I can do anything about that. That's better. This. Oh, that's cute. Wire popped. So I get to do a repair instead of doing anything else. Right, back in a few. Okay. About 10 minutes worth of rework there, but we've managed to sort it. Ha ha ha. But it means I also need to really seriously look at doing like this. I may come up with a different shroud for this, because ideally what I'd like is something that has a fan blowing on the back of there, especially since I can see a stepper driver heatsink on that. And I'd really prefer that. But to keep these up out of the way, and preferably without breaking them again, let's see what I can do here. This is going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, because basically this is a little CAN bus toolhead. And yeah, ideally, let's see if I can get those to go behind here, like in between. That will help greatly with that alignment. Go. That's a little better. And that should also help with keeping from hopefully breaking it again. There we go. Yeah, sadly they don't offer any additional wire management suggestions for this. I've seen a few remixes of toolhead covers for this, you know, PCB covers. It might be encouraged to do that. There we go. That's the way it should be. There we go. That's looking like it might do it. However, I think there's going to end up being some standoffs. Yeah, I think there's going to end up being some standoffs with this concept. So I'm going to leave that off for now because it looks like there's still a gap. You can see this is where it would hit and these come up right against it. So for now, let's just go ahead and do like this. Until we know whether or not we do actually have standoffs for this. Because if there were some that were allocated for it, then that will be important. But I have a feeling there's that some of the little short standoffs that I saw might be for that. But see, because there's still a main board to mount, I don't want to get too crazy on it yet. And that wiring guide just shows you what plug goes where. It doesn't tell you, hey, try this here. But I'm going to go back to the reference materials. Here we go. That's that one. And that's tight enough. And that should keep things enough out of the way that I think will be okay. There we go. That's it. And I'll probably end up having a little cover that'll go on there. Okay, so with that, in the next episode, I will probably be going on to doing the panels and the rest of the electronics. I think the next one's going to be the electronics, and I believe it's going to have me put them back here. So I shall see you on the next step. Thank you again for watching. Okay, another little epiphany and recognition of where the inspiration, I would call it a fix really, but it's more of a fix to lack of manual. I was actually going to end up skipping this, but I found the resolution. I'd like to give a props over to Ballistic Tech, because I was curious if anybody else had done the actual, 0.2 R1 Pro, and they found that these particular pillars, which is the M3 by 9 by 6, which is 9mm tall, and 6mm diameter, were the solution to using the cable cover, obviously without distorting or breaking wires. So that's what I'm just gonna follow this up real quickly doing. And yeah, again, I can see where he even said this several times in his video. Where's the manual? Where's the manual? What's to do with this? And then somebody else, I think, pointed out to him that this might be another direction, so he got to looking like I did and found inspiration from another streamer, and I found that quite interesting, that this is kind of thing where they give you enough parts, but it's not always described what the best course of action is. And I'm just going to finally be a little bit smarter with this, because I think I'd like these to tighten down. There we go. So that's a 5mm, which is interesting. Anyway, so standoff to a standoff. Now, he even said this. He's like, I've never even thought of a standoff on a standoff. And to be fair, I'm surprised I didn't think of this aspect sooner. But when it comes to a kit, one of the expectations is everything has been planned, laid out, documented, etc. for you. And the idea is, if you use the instructions and you follow the build as it was intended, then it should come out exactly as you saw when you were looking at purchasing it. And I've seen this throughout many different communities, not just in the Vorons, FYSETC, LDO, etc. You'll always have one person that finds one little thing that could have been documented a little bit better, or wasn't documented at all, and it was more assumed, for lack of a better term. And I thought, they got a really good point with that, but obviously there's times where you just want things to be a certain way, and then other times you wonder why they didn't do other aspects. There we go. That's that one. And this is probably going to eat up a little more of the space that I have on, because as you recall, I think I've said this in a few of my other videos, I use my Galaxy S23 Ultra to record these, and because I'm recording it in high quality so that a lot of the detail can be seen, that uses a lot of space. Now I'll probably dump this over to the computer at this point to adjust it a little bit, and obviously change the compression and all that. This way it holds it in where I need it to, but in a much smaller size, and then I can piece everything into equal parts for people to watch, because it can be frustrating, I know. There we go, that's it. That's the one. Okay, so that's a little bit better. Let's put those sockets away. Yeah, nice little kit that I got from local shops. Anyway, so with that now, I am going to bring up one, and I don't know if anybody wants to mention it to him at Ballistic Tech. He was going to put zip ties up here. He's like, oh, but they got this cable cover. Mate, you were on the right idea. The problem was you had these little lock areas sticking out on the outside. Slide them to the inside like that. Get them to the inside and you're good. It'll all stay right where you wanted, and it'll keep those nice and tidy. Yeah. And as we will see here, there's some little flared out areas that you can use for some of this. And I believe, need to raise that up just a tiny bit. There we go. And like with the rest of this build being this way, I mean, you don't want the wires right against the motor, because anybody that knows the Numa 14s, they can get quite toasty. I probably should swivel those wires to the bottom side, if anything. Let's just do that, actually, because I'm looking at that and I'm like, yeah, let's swivel the wires to the bottom side of that instead of the top. But we want the locks to stay on the top. There we go. And it still lets you keep them off the motor, but at the same time gives you that little extra bit of maneuverability with the cover. I mean, yeah, you could probably adjust the model of this cover just a little bit to accommodate all of these aspects. There we go. Now, where is... There we go. There's where that is. Okay. Am I hitting? Ah, it's touching here already. Here we go. And now we can use our M3 8mm absolutely perfectly. Absolutely beautiful. Perfect. I think I may actually try my hand at model adjustment on this, because I like this shroud, but I think there's some room for a little bit of improvement, if that makes sense. Whether it be a little 30mm fan or even a 25, just blowing here where some of it comes up across and down, or something that gives it two air path channels, for example. I'm no major CAD artist, but I can sometimes do little modifications to these to improve or add feature to them. I just have to give that some thought, but that's for down the line. And there we go. There's our... There we go. And that is our head done. Okay, and with that, that definitely will be the final part of this. The next stages will be putting together the panels, the electronics, which I believe are the next stages according to what I've been reading. So with that, thank you again, and I'll see you for the next section.